بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. And welcome to the Living with Barakah show. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we will be talking about how to have a mindful Dhul Hijjah. Now for those of us who's joined us the first time, if this is the first time you sort of know about the Product Muslim or Living with Barakah, this show is all about connecting spirituality to personal and professional development. The idea is that there's so much in our faith, so much in our tradition that helps us become a better version of ourselves, help us become spiritually intelligent leaders that make impact in the ummah. And this show, we interview guests, we do have discussions, and it's live on Facebook, on YouTube, and also on LinkedIn pages. Just explore that topic, go a bit deeper. And today we want to go deeper with the topic of mindfulness. I'm sure you've all heard the buzz about mindfulness. Maybe you've heard many people talk about mindfulness. I want us to introduce this topic, but in a very unique angle, in a very unique way. We'll be sort of linking the topic of mindfulness to to basically the days that are coming up very, very soon, the days of Hajj. For most of us, well, this year, especially for many of us, Hajj is just not accessible. And the question is, well, what do you do those days of Hajj? You might do the Qurbani, you might have Eid, you might fast on the day of Arafah, you might do the Adhkar for the first days of 10 days of Dhul-Hijjah. But yet sometimes you might go through these 10 days and not really maximize your potential, maximize the kind of the benefit you want to get from that experience. So what we wanted to do was to explore a skill, something you can develop in these next 10 days that can really help you not only make the most of these 10 days and kind of sort of connect deeply with these 10 days and the stories of Hajj and the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, but also help you develop that skill of mindfulness and calmness and dealing with anxiety and stress as well. And with us to help us sort of explore this deeply, inshallah ta'ala, is none other than my good friend, Brother Wadud Hassan. Brother Wadud is the founder of the Mindfulness Matters Leadership and Character Development Institute, as well as the founder of the Muraqaba app. He's been teaching mindfulness at the Barakah Academy, Barakah Muslim, for the past couple of years, as well as on many other platforms. He's probably one of the pioneers in this idea of faith-based mindfulness, kind of Islamic mindfulness, what it means to sort of understand the science of mindfulness from an Islamic perspective. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Wadud.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair,
Alhamdulillah.
Muhammad, for having me.
Barakallah feek. Thank you for joining us. I guess for starting off this question of, before we dive into understanding what are those mindful qualities of Dhul Hijjah and how can we connect the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, if you were to briefly define mindfulness and define what is Islamic mindfulness from your perspective, inshallah.
Yes, so Bismillah, salatu salam wa rasulillah, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri, wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum everybody for joining. Inshallah, it's an honor to have all of your beautiful presence for this beautiful series, inshallah, that is dear to my heart and something that I personally need, inshallah, to nurture myself and ourselves together during the beautiful days of Dhul Hijjah. Mindfulness is, so this is a really good question. Mindfulness is, a very common, I think, a street definition would be mindfulness is about not getting carried away. Mindfulness is about not getting carried away. It is our ability, or it is the ability to reorient our attention and focus. It's mindfulness is the ability to find our calm among all the different stresses in life. Your calm during the storm, during the distractions, during the noise. How can you return to your calm despite the distractions and stress in our lives? So we finished Ramadan, and then we had some time, and then now we're getting into another beautiful time. And then life happened. So many different things happened. We had all these beautiful plans for our post Ramadan life, right? And then maybe we're not really fully meeting or really fully measuring up to what we wanted to do after Ramadan. And Dhul Hijjah is that time again to refocus and reorient ourselves and to come back. So this is why I feel that this concept of mindfulness, about not getting carried away, is so beautiful spiritually, especially at these very sacred times, inshallah. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of us can feel that that sort of you post Ramadan dip, and then Hajj comes just at the right time to kind of restart us. But I guess for many of us, again, if you're not going to Hajj, And for this year especially, a lot of us will not be going to Hajj because of restrictions. How can we cultivate? Why should we think about mindfulness as a way to us to deepen our relationship with this story of Hajj, inshallah?
Right. So, when you think about that definition of mindfulness is our awareness of things that are around us. Mindfulness is our ability to not get car- getting not getting for about is about not getting carried away. Then who is a better example than the father of monotheism, the grandfather of the prophets, Khalilullah, the friend of God himself, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. That who is a better example than Ibrahim alayhi salam when it comes to practicing that God-centered spiritual mindfulness? That someone who did not get carried away, like from when he was a child, when everybody else was getting carried away, he could come back to understand or seek who God was, who is his Lord. He's finding that from a very young age, even to the point that he's being thrown into the fire. Things that you're supposed to get carried away for, right? Like fire is one of those things that you're supposed to just like leave your salah. Like you're not supposed to do khushu during fire, right? You're supposed to leave your salah and just get carried away, just run away from fire. And for Ibrahim alayhi salam, he's literally being thrown into the fire, and he's not getting carried away, to the point that even the angel comes and he's not even getting carried away to the angel, like somebody that angels cannot come without the permission of Allah. So he's not even getting carried away to the angel. He's even not asking his help. He's asking only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So who else is an example who else is a mountain of an example of this epitome of mindfulness, than Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. So Dhul Hijjah is a beautiful time to think about him and think about the qualities that he had in his heart. And, of course, we see that translated into his family, right? Hajj alayhi salam or Ismail alayhi salam. We see that, that all of these, the heart, it affects other hearts. What's in your heart, it will affect other hearts. It's not so much what we say. It's more about what we really believe and what we really feel and what we really have in our heart. And, a purified heart, a connected heart, a mindful heart will help others and will guide others. So this is why the heart is the king. The Prophet said that when this is correct, all the actions of the limbs are correct. So we see that effect in his family, that the entire story, the prelude, the precursor story before the opening of Zamzam or the laying the foundation of Kaaba, all of that is based on qualities of their hearts. And what we wanted to explore in this series is how to cultivate those qualities.
Beautiful. I love that point you just made about, who is really more mindful than someone being thrown in the fire and being so chill, like, yep, being thrown in the fire. Hasbi al ni'mal wakil. Angel Jibril comes and tells, hey, would you like some help? Like, nope, no thanks. I know Allah will help me. Talk about mindfulness and being present. That is a great example. And yeah, it's absolutely very, very powerful. So what I guess from the stories of Hajj itself, and maybe you could just share a few of the qualities. Like, what are the qualities that you see that helped Ibrahim alayhi salam cultivate that mindfulness despite the stresses and challenges and situations he was in?
Yeah. So yeah, this is a beautiful question. There are many beautiful qualities that we can learn from someone like Ibrahim alayhi salam, right, or his family. But some of the qualities that I wanted to talk about today, and I think we're trying to feature here for this intro to this series, to this course that we're going to be doing next week, is the quality of really turning yourself off from the noise around you. This spiritual silence, when you are turning yourself off from everybody else and what they're saying and what they're doing, to really try to focus on trying to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, And Ibrahim alayhi salam, that contemplation that happens in silence, that you're contemplating and you're reflecting. And Ibn Ata'illah, rahimahullah, one of our spiritual teachers and faqih, he mentions this also, that contemplation, that this fikr, this reflection that happens in silence, that you meditate, you contemplate and reflect on God, and you try to be mindful of God. and you turned off the noise and you are practicing silence, that is the lamp. He says that is the lamp of the heart. It illuminates the heart. So we see this example, not just Ibrahim alayhi salam, but we see, time and time again with various prophets that had to kind of leave their surroundings, their environment, go somewhere special and try to have that communication, or that seeking out, or that relationship that they're building, or that first wahi that they receive. That silence from, you're kind of like you're recalibrating your frequency. You're recalibrating your frequency from this world to something that is not around you. And we see that right in the beginning, Ibrahim alayhi salam is nurturing this, in himself. He's out there seeking God, seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then starts guiding his heart. As we free ourselves from this world, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it starts guiding our heart. And this is what we see from his, initial story, but also the story of Hajj, that he was not allowed to speak. He could not really respond in words. He only pointed, or he only, showed a sign that was the command of Allah. When Hajj asked that, was this a command of God, that you're leaving us here in the middle of nowhere? And this silence, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he just pointed and he just kind of, with signs said yes. And this is kind of like this initially, this concept of, it's not so much about your words, it's about whether your heart is connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the same thing about Zakaria alayhi salam, that those 3 days or 3 nights that you have to be silent. What is the sign? That give me a sign that I'll have a son, or I'll have a baby, and okay, go silent from the world, and you will see the signs of God appear. And then the angel spoke to him from behind the mihrab, we see in the Quran. So this is a very important concept in the Quran that sometimes we're not capitalizing enough in our lives. Like Abu Darda radiallahu anhu said that the Prophet ﷺ told him to adopt long periods of silence. Rasulullah said that, oh, Abu Darda, adopt long periods of silence. And this is not just you be silent for the sake of like not talking. This silence is that cultivating that mindfulness, cultivating that spiritual frequency, cultivating that presence of God, that stillness of heart. And this is the foundation before you can receive, before you can get to the next level. This is why the Prophet had to cut himself off from Mecca and go up all the way to really find that deep silence. Physically he went away, but he had to really find that spiritually before Angel Jibreel alayhi salam appeared, right? So cultivating that silence is really important for us, withdrawing ourselves from everything we're doing and just kind of connecting with God and cultivating ourselves is really important. And Mindful Dhul Hijjah is going to be about that. And Dhul Hijjah 10 days could be a really important time when you withdraw from a few things that you do, like your habits of watching Netflix, or getting carried away, or being distracted, or just taking that hour away for yourself, taking whatever time you can, even 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and just every day taking some time to be silent with God. And you could, of course, you could recite the Quran, you can do your athkar, you can read a really good book, you can journal, but also just trying to experience God just for a few minutes, being silent from everything else and seeing that how can I be in the presence of God? And that requires cultivation.
Love that. Can I ask maybe a question that maybe some others might ask, like, why are we scared of silence? Why are we uncomfortable with silence? We're almost like if you sit 5 minutes, you want to open the radio and put something in your headphones. You want to just sit silent. It feels really uncomfortable. What is it about that?
Subhanallah. Sayyidina Muhammad. That's a really beautiful question. Yeah, that's a really beautiful question. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, Allah. So, yeah, I think this is a beautiful question. I think that we have, many of us have not fully, where we might have some fear, or we might have this sense of being afraid of what might come up when we are not continuously being distracted, right? So there have been difficult emotions, there might have been things that you have not processed fully within yourselves that will surface when you are silent. For some people, and they may not want to get to it. A lot of people, they just kind of try to put it under the rug and try to keep moving forward, keep doing things to keep themselves distracted. And we know from neuroscience research that not processing emotions or not having a good way to be aware and regulate your emotions can turn into stress, and can, even if you are trying to not think about it, it can really distract you, and also definitely bar you or make be an obstacle from you reaching your highest potential. So sometimes that fear, that what might I find during the silence, and also sometimes just that unfortunateness of not experiencing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in silent, that we haven't experienced Allah, and we've just done the motions and movements, but we have not really felt or experienced Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what can be sweeter than that experience between me and God, and when nobody else is there, right? So also trying to learn that experience and really capitalize experience. May Allah grant all of us tawfiq, inshallah.
Exactly. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very powerful, and I guess finding those moments as well. So so those who's joining us live right now, we are talking about qualities that help us cultivate mindfulness during the Dhul-Hijjah, inspired by the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Wadud just shared one of the first qualities we hear from the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam is this idea of silence, and how it's so important to cultivate silence, to experience Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be present, and also not to enter, also to just process some of our challenges and emotions as well. So that was one quality. What else can we get from Ibrahim alayhi salam's story, inshallah?
Something that he's an epitome of that quality, the second quality that I wanted to mention, right? Of course, whenever we talk about Ibrahim alayhi salam, first thing we talk about is that, his this utmost reliance of God, right? This is always in the story, and this you can never miss. Even with kids, as you're telling them the story of the fire, like, oh my God, he has so much, he relies on Allah, he trusts Allah, he believes in God, he has like unshakable faith. And that is something that you definitely know about Ibrahim alayhi salam, the reliance. And it is also an act of the heart, that ilah, when we say la ilaha illallah, the ilah is someone, our scholars have explained to us, that ilah is someone that as soon as you have a difficulty or problem or distraction, where does your mind go first? That is your ilah. That you're sick and the doctor is going to cure me, or I am broke and I need to go to someone that can give me money or funds, or where does your mind go first? So ilah is someone that we need to cultivate, that ilah in our heart, that whatever we need, any type of difficulty, before we ask solutions from anybody else, before we try to control, change, ask, demand from anyone, anything, we first go and we beg from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we trust in Him first. And this we know from the Hasbi Allah Ni'mal Wakil, the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and this is kind of like the crown jewel of the stories of Ibrahim alayhi salam, that how much trust and reliance he had. But to understand that this reliance from the heart, this was rooted in that deep understanding of who God was. This was deeply rooted in his experiencing God and being in the presence of God. So you cultivate that reliance by being in the presence of God. You can't just automatically have your mind go towards something if you'd never be with that something, on a regular basis. So whatever you talk about, you're exposed to, that's what your heart is going to have, right? It's like our the analogy I heard when I was young. I heard an analogy of the sponge, right? That the heart is like a sponge, and at the time of our death, what comes out of the sponge? Whatever is inside the sponge. When you do the squeeze, whatever is inside the sponge, that's what's going to come out. So if we have God, it'll come out, and if we have something other than God, then may Allah forgive us and protect us, then that will come out. So that reliance of God, and how to reorient our attention when you're distracted. So this is a very important quality. Like if you think about modern, neuroscience-based mental health, emotional life skills training in mindfulness, this is kind of like the core of the training. Like when your mind wanders to all these anxiety or distraction or depressive thoughts or sadness or other, emotional distress, how can you let it pass, and how can you just come back to the present moment? And a lot of times our difficulties, like our stress, our worry, our anxiety, mostly reside in something that has happened already, or that something that is to happen, that is going to happen. And it is not about where I am right now in this moment. right? So if there is a way for us to distance ourselves from what has happened in the past, and Islam has given us the tools for that, right? That we make istighfar and we can cleanse everything that has happened in the past. And then what might happen in the future. And Islam has always also given us a tool for that, that we trust in God, we make dua, we give sadaqah, we protect ourselves from what might happen in the future, and we believe in our dua, and we, in the present, focus on God. So this distraction and learning to train your mind to come back to the present moment and focus in the moment and focus in your work and let those thoughts pass through is the cure to slowly expanding your mind's capacity to focus this much, to focus this much, to focus this much. And this is what is called the neuroplasticity, that with practice you can change how your brain functions. And with practice, with regular practice, you not only change the functionality of the brain, but you actually can literally change the structure of the brain. So for example, the DMN, the default mode network in the brain, which is responsible for mind wandering, when our mind wanders to these things, how do we bring it back to focus, is that you can train and you can turn that DMN activity off by practicing mindfulness every day and expanding that capacity of the brain. So it's something that's trainable. And the good news is that even adults, we can train, we can change the functionalities of our brain. And not only just the functionalities of the brain, we can actually literally change the structure of the brain, right? So reliance and tawakkul is one of those things that our mind goes to, who is going to help me? Like for Hajj alayhi salam, like who is here to help me? Is there anybody here? Is there like anybody in like 100 miles from here? Is there any water? Is there any food? Is there, who's going to feed me? Who's going to give me anything? Where am I going to stay? How am I going to save myself from the sun? What about animals and beasts? Who's here for me, right? This distraction, which is like a very important distraction for human survival, right? Again, for just like the fire, it's a very important, like this is something you're supposed to, you're not supposed to just go out there and just do random stuff, right? I mean, in a logical way. You have to find a shelter, you have to find things, and this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given as the sunnah of this world. But for them, this was they were Allah setting a example that see, like if they could do this, you guys could do this, right? So basically for them, for her to not have those distractions, come back and say, is this the command of God? And if he has commanded it, then the protection of God is in that command. And this is where that obedience piece come in, that when you are mindful of God and what he wants from you, he's mindful of protecting you. Like what the Prophet told Ibn Abbas, that, oh, my son, be mindful of God and God will protect you. And be mindful of God and you'll find him in front of you. You'll find him with you. And so she knew that God is with me if it is God's command that I'm protecting. When I'm protecting his commands, he's protecting me. I'm in his protection. And he does not lose his people. He does not lose his people. He does not waste the people that trust him. So that other piece after reliance, that once you have tawakkul, you're able to then do what God wants from you, so that God facilitates what you want from him.
SubhanAllah, SubhanAllah. And that's a very sort of powerful way of putting it, because a lot of times, like you said, because we don't have that complete trust, we might waver in our obedience, right? You might think, I have a meeting, it's prayer time, but that meeting is really important. Let me just go attend the meeting and I'll pray later, right? Or it's Jum'ah and my boss called me for a meeting at 2:00 and I'm thinking, no, maybe I'll just skip today and I'll try to make it up. So we sometimes, unfortunately, the trust is not strong enough that the obedience then wavers. And what you're saying, which is very powerful, the idea that unless we build that reliance, and we build that reliance by knowing who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, by being present, by understanding who he is, and that he will take care of us if that we need to rely on him. And that means you go ahead and you commit to those commandments without it, without a nagging question back in your mind saying, will this work or not? Right? It's powerful. It's completely powerful.
Yeah.
And the context of this can apply in parenting, in family, in careers, in business, just having that reliance that leads to obedience.
Yeah, but one of the things that I also want to just mention here is that people might think that I either have it or I don't, right? And it is not a zero-sum game, right? This reliance piece, like it is something you continue to cultivate. we are as human beings going to get distracted. We are, as human beings, are going to sometimes disobey. Sometimes we're going to, just get carried away, right? But it's about whether you can come back to that practice. The entire concept of Tawbah is that there is a practice, there is a gift that God has given you until the sun rises from the west, right? Until we can go back to God, that He has given us this ability and this practice to come back to. So in terms of the mindfulness, the concept of neuroplasticity in the mindfulness training, in the professional world, or even when we think about spiritual practice of our scholars and their ways, this is a beautiful thing that they have taught us, that we can always come back to it. It's not that, oh yeah, I don't have it, or I do. It's about, are you cultivating it? Are you continuously returning to it? Are you, when you find your distraction, coming back to and reorienting yourself? Because God's mercy is waiting for you. God's mercy is ready to accept you. God's mercy is ready to move you forward, right? So it's about just continuously returning to that practice when we find those distractions, because we are going to find those distractions.
Beautiful, beautiful. And one of the practices that you speak about that's very important and that helps you keep coming back is the idea of remembrance, right? The idea of just, and the days of Dhul Hijjah are meant to be days of remembrance. If you could just talk about that and how can it also Ibrahim alayhi salam, inshallah.
Yeah, so of course, the days of remembrance, days of really cultivating that remembrance and mindfulness of God. But one of the purpose of when we were thinking about the Mindful Dhul Hijjah course was that how do we make this remembrance come alive through the experience? Not just that the Prophet said that there are no other days that it is better to recite takbeer, or tahleel or tahmeed. There's no other day to affirm the greatness of God, that God is greater than everything else that I have got in this life. God is greater than my worries. God is greater than my distraction. God is greater than my stress. God is greater than my fear. God is greater than my, things that are taking me away from my best self. He's greater than those things, and He can take care of all those things when I focus and keep moving forward. And Imam Muhasibi mentioned this. He said that all of these distractions that we find in our life, they are nothing but just a test to know that these are just distractions of this life. These are just to know that these are distractions, and to learn to overlook and overcome and keep coming back to our focus and keep moving forward to God. So this is something that we have to learn, that, okay, these are just distractions. Let me come back and focus on God. Let me come back and focus on that remembrance. So one of the purpose was that we will do guided, Islamic mindfulness practices through the Mindful Dhul Hijjah course. Every day in the course, you will receive a guided practice where we're actually sitting down and we're doing it with tafakkur, we're doing reflection, but we're also remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that remembrance is guided in such a way that we can try to think about that experience. Not just we just say, we take a tasbih, which is really important, and just say, subhanallah, subhanallah, and that's also something that is great, that you are in remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through your tongue, right? That's also a blessing. But how do you also transfer and try to cultivate that feeling and that experience of the tongue into our heart? And this is what we're trying to focus on. That how do we hear about the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, we hear about fasting and praying and the other worship that are really important in these 10 days, right? But how do we cultivate our heart to be present? How do we cultivate our heart to be like the heart of the family of Ibrahim alayhi salam? And this was why this course was about that cultivating that heart. So that everything we do, when you fast on the day of Arafah, you're also fasting in your heart from all those difficult thoughts or all those thoughts that distract you. When you're remembering God, you're not just saying the tasbih, but you're also trying to experience it. So how do we have that? And how do you practice that? Because we need it. I know I need it, right? Right before, I was supposed to plan for this entire course last week, and all of a sudden, my parents got sick, and there was last minute procedure, and there was distraction. And I know that by the end of the week, when I was not getting things done, I was getting stressed, and I was finding myself to be like, okay, I'm not really at my best self. I'm not really doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And then later on, trying to find that compassion in God and understanding that this is the life. This is the life we lead. We have constrictions, and then we have expansions, and we have to just be content and keep coming back to God and asking him to forgive us for our shortcomings, and keep coming back to the practice. And then I started recording this week and started planning for the course, and realizing that God was going to give me this opening, so he put me through some purification and some difficulty, and that was also a blessing. So it's going to happen. Mindfulness is not about just being in your like Zen state all the time, right? That's not real mindfulness. That's not this world. That's only in Jannah. But this world, you're going to have those distractions. Mindfulness is about learning some tools so that you can keep practicing, whether you are going through a beautiful time and relaxing time, or whether you're going through a little bit of a challenging time.
That's really, really important. Of course, you've been referring to the Mindful Dhul-Hijjah course, which will start inshallah ta'ala on Sunday, the first Dhul-Hijjah, and how you'll take a cohort, a small cohort, with some guided Islamic mindfulness practices, where, like you said, things you can go back to, things you can refer back to. Of course, all linked to the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, linked to the story of Hajj. And it's a very short course, but it's a 6-day course that you can really enhance your experience during the month of Dhul Hijjah, and just becomes a skill in your toolbox that you can use and you can refer back to. Like you said, life will throw things at you, and having the skill set is very powerful. It just enriches you. You feel okay. Yes, nothing is gonna go. It's not gonna go rosy all the time, but at least I know how to manage myself, how to manage my emotions, how to manage my stresses as well. Maybe if you give us a taste of a mindfulness practice that perhaps you can lead right now, that just give everyone a taste of what it looks like and where we can go with that, inshallah.
Sure, inshallah, of course. Jazakallah khair, inshallah. We will talk more about the other qualities that we'll feature in the course. Before I share, there is a really important practice of hope. How do you cultivate hope? We didn't talk about it today, but inshallah, we will be also talking about that deep hope in God that Hajar alayhi salam had. We will do a practice around that next week as well. Because a lot of times we feel like in this life we lose that hope. We feel like the difficulty I'm in, I'm not going to overcome this. So that's also a really important quality of a believer, that optimism and hope in God, as long as we live. So inshallah, I'm looking forward to having you there. Yes, let's do a practice. For this practice, I prepared a guided practice, mindfulness, Islamic mindfulness practice on takbeer, tahleel, and tahmeed. And as I was mentioning, that Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that there are no days that are greater before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in which good deeds are more beloved than these 10 days. 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. So recite, he actually commanded us, he said, recite a great deal of tahleel, la ilaha illallah, takbeer, Allahu Akbar, and tahmeed, alhamdulillah. So we specially mention, we have a special dhikr that we do from the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, lillahi alhamd. So we will do a guided practice on that, inshallah. Before I lead you through this practice, I'm going to turn my video off for this practice. But before I do, I just want to give you a little instruction of how to kind of sit and try to bring our mind to this moment, right? And we call it, I call it grounding. We ground our attention in this present moment. So this is also part of that attention training, that part of that mindfulness training. So Bismillah. So what you do is, if you're sitting on a chair, then you sit in a way that you have your back supported on the chair. If you're sitting on a chair, that support your lower back on that chair. Just kind of have this sense of grounding in the space you're sitting in. If you're able to, you can turn towards a qibla if you want, because we're making dhikr of Allah. And if you're sitting, then your hands, place them on your thighs and feel your thighs, just like we sit in that tahiyyat position. Lengthen your spine, lengthen your upper back, your spine, so that you bring just a little bit like the sense of alertness. You're just trying to receive from God. Yet you drop your shoulders, just soften your shoulders. Create this sense of relaxation, like be alert, yet be relaxed. This optimal position between, being alert to remember God. So you're not just, just kind of, you're not in a lazy position. You're not in a way that you're not fully ready to receive, but at the same time, you're not so, you're also showing that sense of humility. You're also lowering your wings. and lowering our gaze, and perhaps if it helps for this mindfulness practice, you can also either soften your gaze, so you're kind of blocking out the vision from other things around you to kind of focus on this experience where you're trying to remember God, or you're trying to bring this in your heart. You're completely closing your eyes and you're looking inward in your heart. So these are postures, and these are instructions that many of our scholars have mentioned, and they have given us these practices. And it's beautiful that you see some of this correlation in today's mindfulness practice. You see that many of these things are actually mentioned about posture and about sitting, and we see that many of our scholars have told us and showed us how. And also Imam Muhasibi, one of our scholars, mentioned that when you're sitting down for practicing this Islamic, contemplation meditation or the guided Islamic mindfulness practice, you can try to quiet your inner voice. So a lot of times, even when you have calmed down and you've sat somewhere, your inner voice is still speaking. You have all these thoughts or things that your inner self is still saying. So asking your inner self or whoever's speaking, inside, to say, just relax, calm down for a minute, and we will now only try to be in the presence of God. We will try to be in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as we practice this practice, inshallah. Bismillah. With that, I'm going to ask Muhammad to turn off my video, inshallah. And Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. I'll start by making an intention that we are reviving this beautiful sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to recite takbeer, tahleel, and tahmeed in the first 10 days of Dhul-Hijjah. We're not in it yet, but we're practicing so that inshallah we can learn to practice this during those 10 days. And share a small story before I lead you through this practice. In Fatwa Shami, in volume 1, it's mentioned that Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he began moving the knife on his beloved son Ismail alayhi salam, the angels sent by Allah with the ram exclaimed, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allah is greatest, Allah is greater, Allah is greater. And when Ibrahim alayhi salam heard the voice of the angels, he replied, La ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar. And then, when Ismail alayhi salam understood that he was relieved from that test, then he said, Allahu Akbar walillahi alhamd. So this was one of the narrations. And so these words are blessed and beautiful. And inshallah, with that, let's go into our practice. Bismillah. We'll start by practicing a biophysiological device to train our attention, which is our breath. Let's start by taking a deep breath together. Taking a deep breath in and a long breath out. Let's do a couple of more of these deep breathing practice. And as we breathe in, try to gather your attention on the breath. Taking a deep breath in and a long breath out. Taking one more deep breath in and a long breath out. Try to let go of the stress, any type of difficulty that you might have had in your body. Just let go and bring this sense of ease and relaxation in your body. Let us learn to gather our attention on the process of breathing before we focus on remembering God, trying to gather our mind. Just normally, without having to shorten or lengthen your breath, just breathing in and breathing out. Where is that breath most alive in your body? Perhaps placing your hand around your nostrils. Do you feel the breath around your nostrils? Placing it on your chest. Do you feel it on your chest? Or perhaps on your abs. Do you feel the breath on your abs? Or it might be a sensation of your entire body breathing. Wherever the breath is most alive for you, calling that the anchor of our attention, collecting our attention in that point in our body, that place in our body. And see if you can just stay there just for a few moments as you breathe in and breathe out. Gathering your kind and gentle attention at that anchor point of your breath. And if your mind wanders, kindly and gently bringing it back. It's okay for your mind to wander, just kindly and gently bringing it back. In Tafsir Qurtubi, Dawood alayhi salam asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, show me your blessing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Dawood alayhi salam to take a breath and said, Dawood, in every breath is my blessing. So being grateful and bringing the sense of gratitude in our heart that we're sitting here and we are remembering God and we're using a gift of God to train our attention. Now we will start by focusing on this remembrance of God. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Just saying Allahu Akbar with our tongue just for a few moments. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater. Allah is greater. Allah is greater. And can you say Allahu Akbar for a few moments from your heart without moving your tongue? When our mind wanders, bringing it back to Allah. Allah is greater than my thoughts, my distraction, my worries. And Allahu Akbar is that anchor. Allahu Akbar is that anchor to refocus our attention in our salah. Every time our mind wanders in our salah, we say Allahu Akbar and we bring our mind back. Allah is greater than anything that our mind is going to. Bring it back to Allah. Just visualize for a second that Allah is the source of all safety, all assurance, all security. Allah is greater than all my worries, my anxieties. Maybe tell yourself in your heart that little worries and a greater God. Worries are very little. My problems are very little when it comes to such a great God. Little worries and a greater God. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Bringing to your heart this sense of peace, visualizing Allah's peace and mercy descending upon your heart. How does it feel to experience Allah in your heart? How does it feel to tell your worries, your distractions that you can pass through? I am with my God and my God is greater. Allahu Akbar. Bring this sense of ease. Bring this sense of ease in your body, just relaxing, letting go. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Hadith Qudsi, I am with my servant as he thinks of me. And whoever remembers and is conscious of God and returns to God, whoever is mindful of God, God will find a way out from them, from places that they did not even expect. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَل لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. He will bring solutions from all our difficulties from places we did not even expect. Having this sense of deep reliance and this sense of deep expectation that Allah may come back to you. You are greater than everything else that I'm experiencing. You give me a way out. Allahu Akbar. See if you can just be in this, just take in this Allahu Akbar and this experience for a few moments in silence, just for a few moments. If your mind wanders, just kindly and gently bring it back to the presence of God in your heart and this awareness and remembrance of God. We will now engage in tahleel, La ilaha illallah, renewing our iman and our faith with La ilaha illallah. negating all distractions and returning to the mindfulness of God. La ilaha illallah. When there was nothing was there, God was there. La ilaha illallah. And when nothing will be there, God will be there. La ilaha illallah. There is no one who can benefit me but Allah. La ilaha illallah. There is no one that can harm me but Allah. La ilaha illallah. Negating everything and affirming God. There's no one who can give me without the permission of Allah. La ilaha illallah. And there is no one who can take from me without the permission of God. La ilaha illallah. Bringing your attention, as you say illallah, bringing your attention back to your heart and bringing that experience in your heart to really be in the presence of God, remembering God. No one can make me happy or sad without the permission of Allah. La ilaha illallah. No one can change my condition without the permission of Allah. La ilaha illallah. Can you experience saying La ilaha illallah without moving your tongue, in silence, just from your heart for a few moments? Coming back to this expectation that I am with my servant as he thinks of me. Whoever says La ilaha illallah, the Prophet said, it becomes wajib for Allah to protect him and not punish him. O Allah, we expect by La ilaha illallah, sincerely in our heart, your safety and your protection, your pleasure in this world and in the next. Taking your attention back to our breath just for a minute, just for a few seconds, few moments. See if you can stay in silence and take in that experience of La ilaha illallah, experience that in the heart just for a few moments. Letting go of any distractions, any stress or difficulty from our body, bringing this sense of ease in our body. Before we end, we will also remember Allah through tahmeed. Walillahi alhamd, all praise belongs to Allah. And we begin every rak'ah of every salah with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praises to Allah. All openings come through this praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fatiha, which is the opening. All openings in our life is connected to the gratitude of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La in shakartum la azidannakum. That we expect that as we thank Allah and we cultivate gratitude of Allah in our heart, Allah will grant us increase. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant us increase. So saying Alhamdulillah from our heart. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Walillahi alhamd. All praises to Allah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater than all our worries, all our distraction, returning to the presence of Allah. La ilaha illallah. No one can give or take. I only need and want, ask from Allah. La ilaha illallah. Walillahi alhamd. Every praise, every thank is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Having this deep expectation that if I am thankful and grateful to Allah, Allah will only grant me increase. Oh Allah, do not decrease us, but continue to increase us. Spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially, socially, in every aspect in my life, continue to grant me increase. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd. Before we close this practice, bringing to mind some intentions for this next 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. What are some intentions you have for these 10 days? How are you going to show up to Allah? How are you going to show up with your heart with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these 10 days? How are you going to cultivate your heart like the heart of Ibrahim alayhi salam and his family during this 10 days of Dhul Hijjah? Just making some intentions in your heart. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Inshallah, we can return to the room together. You can open your eyes, come back to each other. Hope that was not too long. Inshallah.
MashaAllah,
Allahu
MashaAllah,
Akbar,
MashaAllah.
Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, lillahi alhamd. May Allah grant us tawfiq, inshallah, to experience the beautiful mindful Dhul Hijjah, inshallah.
Ameen, Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Beautiful. How was that? If you guys can share in the comments for those who are following along, how was the experience? What did you feel? If you can just share that, we'd love to hear from you, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallah khair. That was beautiful. Again, a lot of us, we perhaps know this remembrance, we say it, but we sometimes forget about it, right? We don't experience it. The word experience is very, very powerful. Maryam Aqil is sharing here that it was much needed. So Jazakallah khair, Maryam, for sharing that. Definitely much needed for all of us is to just get us grounded. And like I said, this is a skill, right? I know that sometimes you think, well, this whole, what is it, what is it, where is this, and Wadud has done a lot of amazing research about how to practice the skill, how to make the skill real. And this is where it's very important to kind of cultivate the skill. And alhamdulillah, Wadud has been teaching a mindfulness masterclass for the past couple of years with Barak Muslim, as well as on his own websites and platforms. And really, it's just the experiencing, just deepening the experience with the deepening experience with salah, with wudu, or with simple remembrances that we all know, but we just have not experienced for a very long time. And he's actually going to be doing a very short but very powerful and very much needed practical 6-day guided Islamic mindfulness course. So for 6 days, inshallah ta'ala, he's going to walk us through an Islamic mindfulness practice that can be added to our toolbox, added to our ability to tackle the stresses and anxieties and challenges we face in life. So if you want to deepen your experience the next 10 days and just take that experience of this 10 days of Hijjah, which normally, like I said, a lot of times we kind of forget about this 10 days or we don't really experience that much because we're just busy with life. It's not like Ramadan, for example. Then this can be a good gateway to make the most of 10 days and experience it differently through some of the Islamic mindfulness practices. And I'd like to ask if Wadud can also share just what exactly will you cover and what people should expect to basically take away from this mindfulness from Mindful Hijjah course, inshallah.
Yes, inshallah. So this course is about connecting, as we were mentioning earlier, connecting to the qualities of the heart. So connecting the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam as he was commanded and he was leaving his wife Hajar and Ismail alayhi salam, what was going through his heart, what was going through the heart of Hajar alayhi salam, and what were those qualities of the heart that brought that mercy, attracted the mercy and blessing, barakah from Allah. And this is the barakah show, right? We need all the barakah from Allah. What were the qualities of the heart that became the qualifiers of barakah, that qualified them for that barakah, qualified them for the openings? And how can we cultivate those qualities of the heart? And every day we will talk about a different quality of the heart of Ibrahim alayhi salam and his family, and we will talk about the Quranic and prophetic guidance on that quality, and we will integrate a little bit of neuroscience when applicable. But more than the lesson, we will do a practical guided practice on how to cultivate that in ourselves. So sitting down and really reflecting on that quality ourselves and doing a mindfulness practice together. So you will get that every day, inshallah. For the 5 days of Dhul Hijjah, and the 6th day, I will do a live session where I'll be taking your questions on how things went, what were some things that you really found beneficial, what other questions you have, and also do a live practice together, inshallah. So 5 days of these lessons and guided practices. I would say that make this an intention for your spiritual self-care, your spiritual cultivation in the beautiful time of mindful Dhul Hijjah, to get you ready for that, kind of really cultivate that 15 minutes, whatever time that you have, that silence, right? That 15 minutes, that 30 minutes, you take that time away for yourself and then dedicate some of that to the less everyday lesson that we send you. And the 6th day we'll be together live, inshallah, answering questions and doing guided practice together. This will get us hopefully ready for that experience, make us go deeper in that mindful Dhul Hijjah experience, but also ready for cultivating ourselves leading up to the course will be finished before 9th of Dhul Hijjah, the special day of Arafah, when you really need to pour your heart out, make a lot of dua, fast, and inshallah the spirit of sacrifice, the spirit of sacrificing something throughout the 10 days, whether you're fasting, whether you're withdrawing yourself from Netflix or anything, any other distraction, and focusing on this course or focusing on these practices. But that spirit of sacrifice also physically, as you do Yom Nahar, as you offer your udhiyah and celebrate the sacrifice, celebrate this, commemorating the qualities that became the precursor of Hajj, precursor of Dhul Hijjah. And even though we're not there physically in Hajj, spiritually kind of relating to that entire experience, inshallah, through these 10 days, and then celebrating Eid with our families, inshallah. Hopefully, this will grant you beautiful openings, this course. And I'm doing this for myself and my own cultivation. And I invite all of you to join me in this journey, inshallah.
Inshallah, mashallah, jazakallah khair. Absolutely. Again, like I said, I think it's a much needed skill, and I want you to, all of us who are watching this, to kind of recognize that this is a skill that can really make a difference to how you basically live your life, how you deal with stresses, how you deal with challenging situations that you're facing at home or in your career or in your family, and also to get ready for, like, one of the intentions we've put for Productive Muslim Company, Baraka Academy, is to kind of help you become spiritually intelligent leaders that make impact in the ummah. And a lot of times people struggle to make impact in the ummah because of just not being able to manage themselves, not being able to manage the avalanche of distractions that are facing us. And these skills become almost necessary for us to cultivate that spiritual intelligence, to cultivate that being able to be centered, to be grounded, to be God-centered, hereafter focused, and purpose impact driven. And once you have these skills, then yes, as you try to make impact in the ummah, you're able to manage yourself, able to manage your anxiety and stresses, you're able to move forward, push through, and have that impact, inshallah. So I highly recommend it. If you have been somebody who have got to be doubtful about mindfulness or interested in mindfulness, but just not sure if it's for you or not, that we've made this course simple, short, practical, skill-based, so that you can tap into it, make the most of it, experience it during the days of Hajj, and then see for yourself if it makes a difference. And I'm sure it will. And as always, we all have our money back guarantee. So if you take this course, it doesn't work for you, you can ask for money back, no questions asked. So the idea there is invest in yourself, take these moments, learn these skills, apply them, see the impact they have. And these are life skills. These are life skills to have, inshallah ta'ala. Brother Wadud, again, jazakallah khair so much for sharing. Just this session itself, I think, has been soothing and has been much needed for all of us. So jazakallah khair. And any final words of advice on people, how they can cultivate, whether they join the course or not, how would they cultivate mindfulness in his last 10 days of Hajj, in his first days of the Hajj, inshallah?
Yeah, that will become another session. How to cultivate last. Yeah, so I would say that Imam Ghazali mentioned 4 ways to cultivate mindfulness. And so just a quick giveaway for those 4 things is that you do your daily adhkar, So sitting down and for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, morning and evening, do your adhkar really mindfully, really being present. And then your dua, take time out every day to make a lot of dua, pouring our hearts out in this 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, especially the day of Arafah. So mindful dua. And then the third thing I mentioned is the tilawat of the Quran, setting a time and how many pages you're going to recite, and maybe increasing that a little bit in the Dhul Hijjah to really connect with the Quran and really reflecting and trying to spend a little bit of the reading time also for reflection. And the fourth is Imam Ghazali mentions this tafakkur, this contemplation, meditation, that really sitting down, sitting in silence and contemplating and meditating, doing the muraqabah practice like we just kind of tried to do right now. So these are the 4 ways Imam Ghazali said to cultivate mindfulness in us as Muslims, mindfulness which is presence of God, mindfulness of God. So inshallah, hopefully at least we can try to commit to these 4 things, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, barakallahu fiik. Again, if you want to learn more about the Mindful Dhul Hijjah course, please check it out at barakahcan.com/mindful Dhul Hijjah. The course starts on Sunday, the 1st of Dhul Hijjah, inshallah ta'ala. So please do join us for that. It's a 6-day course where we will, each day, Wadud will share with you a practical life skill, Islamic mindful skill, which you can practice that day. And the 6th day, you have a live Q&A call and reflection session and a guided meditation session with Wadud. So please do join us for that. With that, I want to say again, once more, Jazakallah khair, Wadud, for joining us and for sharing your insights and sharing experience. I hope that people benefited a lot, inshallah ta'ala. And I hope that all of you who are watching us live can recommend others to watch this session and benefit from it, as well as join the Mindful Dhul Hijjah course. Again, once more, if you've not heard of Product Muslim, please join our company website, the YouTube, company channel, youtube.com/Product Muslim, or go to productmuslim.com and sign up for a newsletter where we share insights on how to connect spirituality to professional development and basically lead a life of impact, lead spiritual intelligent lives that have impact in the ummah, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum, subhanakallah bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.